Welcome to Dart Jewel, a space for soul work, story, and liberation. I'm your host, Dr. Dwayne Gelly. This podcast is where faith meets reflection, where culture holds space for healing, and where purpose finds its voice in our everyday lives. Whether you're walking through pain, standing in purpose, or just learning to breathe again, there's light in your story. So let's walk in it together. My last name is pronounced Gelly and spelled Gelly. I don't think it's hard to say, but somehow it always tripped people up. Growing up, I heard it all. Jelly, Kelly, Gilly, Gillian, and sometimes Jelly. I always corrected folks. It's Gelly with a hard G. It was less about pride and more about protection. Because when people mispronounce your name, especially over and over again, it stops feeling like a simple mistake. It starts to feel like a sort of suppression of identity. You see, names carry more than sound. They carry story. And when someone says your name wrong again and again, they're not just mispronouncing your name, they're reauthoring you without your permission. One of the people who called me Jeli was my middle school French teacher, Mr. Bowers. I spent 2 out of the 3 years in middle school with him. I went to a school that focused on foreign languages, French, Spanish, and Japanese. We were serious about it, or at least they were serious about us taking it seriously. Mr. Bowers had a tradition. Every student had to pick a French name. Mine was Jean. Looking back now, I understand why he did it, but I can also see how unnecessary it was. Another small way of asking children to step slightly away from themselves for the sake of tradition. Still, I went along with it. Jean it was. Mr. Bowers taught in one of those portable trailers outside the main building. Hot in the summers, kind of cold in the winters, thin walls and wooden ramps. One afternoon, class ended like usual. I gathered my things and headed down the ramp, ready to leave that trailer of French conjugations behind. But halfway across the pavement, I heard him calling out, Monsieur Gelly! Monsieur Gelly! I turned around and saw him. He was standing at the top of the ramp, holding my French folder, the one I had forgotten. I jogged back to grab it, and this time he stopped me. Am I saying your name right? He asked. He had a deep concern in his voice, and I replied, No, it's Gelly with a hard G. He nodded and attempted to adjust. I don't know. Maybe he saw it in my body language. Maybe he caught the discomfort in my face. Maybe he recognized, even briefly, that a name isn't just symbols. Because the truth is, when people mispronounce your name enough times, you learn to carry the correction in your body before you ever speak it out loud with your mouth. At the time, it didn't feel profound. It didn't feel sacred. It just felt like another person getting it wrong. At least he tried. At least he asked. Anyway, I moved on. But now, years later, I understand that the universe can use even accidents, even small discomforts to plant seeds. Seeds you won't recognize until they break open inside of you. It wasn't until much later in life that I understood. Not until an evening years removed from middle school, sitting in front of a screen watching the Book of Negroes on Amazon Prime, when a word rose from the dialogue like a song half remembered, Jeli, spoken with reverence this time, spoken with history behind it, the Mende word Jeli, the griot, the living archive, the memory keeper. And in that moment, something deep in me stirred up, a knowing I hadn't realized was asleep. They had called me Jeli by mistake, but the universe, purpose, or maybe destiny had been calling me by name all along. In West African tradition, the Jeli doesn't just tell stories, they protect them, they preserve names, they guard the soul of a people by remembering out loud. The Jeli reminds us who we were so we can remember who we are. And maybe that's what was happening all along. Maybe the universe was planting a question in me I didn't know how to ask. In 2003, I began my spiritual journey, not through religious dogma, but through wisdom seeking, not as doctrine, but as philosophy. That was the year I became aware of my deeper purpose, to preserve the cultural and spiritual systems woven into my community. Not the parts that survive in textbooks, but the parts that live in ceremony and in the marrow of memory. It was in the deconstructing of revivalism, a creolized version of organized religion, where the balance and harmony of my resistance and embrace found a philosophy, a wisdom teaching that allowed me to find self, to find purpose, to reauthor my story, and to be a storyteller. The thing is, stories weren't meant to be preserved behind a glass wall. They were meant to be lived because stories don't thrive in museums. They thrive in people. The universe doesn't call us to be curators of our stories. It calls us to be vessels. Stories, just like purpose, must evolve. If they don't grow, they become scripts you recite instead of truth you embody. And sometimes growing means stretching beyond the borders of expectations. So here I am, a man once frustrated by the mispronunciation of his name, now walking fully in the deeper name he almost missed. And that brings me to you, because maybe this story isn't just about my name. Maybe it's about your story, your purpose, your evolution. Maybe the world hasn't just mispronounced your name. Maybe it has mislabeled you. Maybe it's miswritten you. Maybe it told your story out of order and placed you into a role you never agreed to play. There's a proverb from the Akan people of Ghana. It says, "Your name is your soul." In Caribbean wisdom, we say, a name follows you. And if someone else gave it to you, they may have shaped you how you see yourself. But there's a truth deeper than what you were named. You are not the story they told. You are not the label that was placed on you. You are the author, and authors write. Writing isn't just a craft. It's an act of reclamation. You don't just write a new story. You reclaim your right to tell it in your own tone. I want to offer you 4 guiding questions, not just to sit with, but to work with. However, before we move to those questions, I want to share a metaphor I call the marketplace. I use this metaphor with my clients when they feel overwhelmed by thoughts that don't feel like their own or identities they're struggling to live up to. It's a way to pause, to step back, and to ask, where did I pick this up from? Now, the marketplace is a narrative grounding practice. It's the marketplace of meaning. It's the space we all pass through, often without realizing it, where we pick up beliefs about who we are. The marketplace is the school you went to, the church pew you sat on, the TV shows that taught you what love looks like, the teachers that told you what success sounds like. And here's the thing. We enter the marketplace as unconscious shoppers. We don't know we're being sold anything. We just pick things up. Pride, shame, silence, a narrative about what we're worth, a belief about what people like us can or can't do. And before you know it, you're carrying a bag full of ideas you didn't even want, but you're living in them like they're yours. Here's where the work begins. You pause. You open the bag. You examine each item and you ask, who gave this to me? Why did I accept it? Do I still even want it? That's what it means to become a conscious consumer of your thoughts. And that's the first act of reauthoring your story. As promised, here are my 4 guiding questions. Number 1, what parts of your story have you accepted without questioning who gave them to you? I think back to that day outside the trailer with Mr. Bowers calling after me, Monsieur Gelly. At the time, I didn't ask myself why it bothered me so much. I just picked it up, tucked it into my discomfort, and kept walking. Maybe I had already bought something from the marketplace, a belief that being misnamed meant being misunderstood, and being misunderstood meant I wasn't safe. Number 2, have you been correcting people for misnaming you without realizing you've also been misnaming yourself? Misnaming isn't just about how people say your name. It's about the narrative they've written about you for you, a version that doesn't align with your core self. Sometimes we shrink or stretch ourselves to fit inside someone else's story. But just because they named you doesn't mean they knew you. And just because you've worn the costume doesn't mean you have to stay in character. Naming yourself, in truth, is a spiritual act, a return to essence, a reclaiming of your voice. Number 3, if you are not the story you were told, then who are you outside of it? This is where individual evolution meets cultural responsibility. In Afro-Caribbean communities, we are raised to honor the collective, to carry legacy, to not bring shame. But sometimes the only way the collective can grow is by one individual choosing to evolve. Your evolution is not a betrayal, it's how culture breathes. So if you feel yourself pushing against norms, you might not be breaking the circle, you might be expanding it. Here's the final question. What truth have you been afraid to write because it might change how others see you or how you see yourself? Every story has a tone, and as the author, you set that tone. But tone is set by truth. And some of us have been living in tones that don't fit. Tones of fear, tones of politeness, tones of survival. But when you write from truth, you shift the atmosphere of your own life. Truth might shake things, but it will also settle you. You don't owe the world your secrets, but you do owe yourself your honesty. Your truth is the tone, and your story can't heal without it. If nothing else, remember, You are not the story they told. You are the author. You have the pen. You have the power. And you are not too late. Take your time, tell your truth, and write your story through your authentic voice. Listen, if this reflection stirred something in you, follow Dart Jewel wherever you listen to podcasts. Your next breakthrough might be in the next episode. And don't keep the story to yourself. Share it with someone, a family member, a friend, a neighbor, or even an enemy who might just need a little healing too. Because liberation is contagious, let's spread it. Until next time, blessed love.